Today is April 28th, 2026, and the global energy market just changed forever. The United Arab Emirates has announced it is withdrawing from OPEC, effective May 1st, after nearly 60 years of membership. Let that sink in. The third largest producer in the entire cartel is done with OPEC. This is confirmed by UAE state media, the Energy Ministry, ADNOC's CEO, Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, and every major financial outlet in the world as of this morning. And I want to walk you through everything, because this story has layers that most of the headlines are missing. For anyone newer to the macro space, let's set the foundation fast. OPEC was founded in 1960. Its original mission was simple: coordinate oil production among member nations to stabilize prices and protect revenues. The founding members were Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Today, the 12-member cartel supplies about 36% of the world's crude oil, and those nations control nearly 80% of the world's proven crude reserves. The mechanism is straightforward. Members agree on production quotas. You cap supply, you support prices. OPEC Plus expanded that framework by pulling in non-members, most notably Russia, through a broader supply coordination agreement. The whole system only works if members follow the rules. If a major producer breaks ranks, the pricing power collapses. That's exactly what we're now watching in slow motion. Here's what the mainstream coverage is underweighting. This decision did not come out of nowhere. The UAE has been chafing at OPEC quota constraints for years. While other members were holding barrels back, the UAE was quietly spending $150 billion to massively expand ADNOC's production capacity. They set a target of 5 million barrels per day by 2027 and brought that target forward by 3 years because the investment was ahead of schedule. The problem? Inside OPEC, they were obligated to produce roughly 30% below that capacity. They built the infrastructure to produce nearly 5 million barrels a day. OPEC quotas were capping them well below 3.5 million. For a nation whose entire economy is built on hydrocarbon revenues, that constraint is existential. There's also been escalating political tension between Abu Dhabi and Riyadh. The two countries have backed opposing forces in Yemen. They're competing for foreign investment and economic diversification. The Saudi airstrike on a UAE-backed arms shipment in Yemen was a genuine rupture. So when you ask why the UAE left OPEC, the honest answer is they've been mentally leaving for years. The Iran war just gave them the perfect moment. Now let's talk about the immediate catalyst, because the geopolitical context here is critical. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated air campaign against Iran. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed in the strikes. Iran retaliated by closing the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most important choke point in global energy markets. Before this crisis, roughly 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade and 20% of global LNG passed through it. When Iran closed it, the market went into shock. In March alone, OPEC production collapsed by 27%, a loss of 7.88 million barrels per day. That is the largest supply disruption in OPEC's history. Bigger than COVID, bigger than the 1973 oil crisis, bigger than the Gulf War. Iran mined the strait. The IRGC boarded and attacked merchant vessels. Shipping firms suspended operations entirely. Then in April, the US Navy began blockading Iranian ports, creating what's now called a dual blockade. Neither side has opened the strait. Peace talks failed. As of today, Iran is still in what its own military calls a war situation. Brent crude is trading near $110 to $113 a barrel. WTI broke above 100 again just this morning. Goldman Sachs says global inventories are drawing at a record pace of 11 to 12 million barrels per day in April. The UAE itself saw production crater 44% in March, from 3.4 million barrels per day down to just 1.9 million. So here's the strategic calculus the UAE made. Hormuz is closed anyway. Our production and exports are already constrained. This is the perfect moment to shed the quota handcuffs. When Hormuz reopens, we'll be free to flood the market at full capacity. The UAE energy minister said it himself. Timing is right because it will not significantly impact the market because the Strait of Hormuz is closed and restricted. Cold, calculated, brilliant. This is where the analysis gets really interesting, and where most coverage is stopping short. Rystad Energy's Jorge Leon put it plainly. Saudi Arabia is now left doing more of the heavy lifting on price stability, and the market loses one of the few shock absorbers it had left. Think about what OPEC just lost. The UAE has 4.85 million barrels per day of production capacity. It was the cartel's third largest producer. Gone. With the stated ambition to eventually hit 5 to 6 million barrels per day. At 6 million barrels per day, the UAE would be the fourth largest global producer in the world, behind only the US, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. But more dangerous for OPEC is the contagion risk. Qatar left in 2019, Angola left in 2024. Now the UAE. And energy consultants are already flagging Kazakhstan as a potential next exit. Robin Mills from Kamar Energy told CNN directly, "If there is a time to leave, now is the time." You might see Kazakhstan leave as well. OPEC's foundational mechanism, collective production restraint, only functions when members trust that everyone will hold. Every exit erodes that trust. Every defector tells other members, your quota sacrifice is now subsidizing everyone else's market share. This is a classic prisoner's dilemma, and the UAE just made the dominant rational move. Saudi Arabia now faces an increasingly uncomfortable position. If it cuts to defend prices, it loses market share to an unconstrained UAE. If it boosts production to compete, it destroys the price floor the entire organization was built to defend. There is no clean path forward for the cartel. Let me give you the current picture and forward outlook. As of today, Brent crude is trading near $110 to $113, WTI above 100. The national average for U.S. gasoline hit $4.18 per gallon, the highest of 2026. Goldman Sachs raised its year-end Brent forecast to $90, revised up $10, and pushed back Gulf export normalization to end of June at the earliest. The bear case for prices: Hormuz stays closed through Q2 or Q3. Iran rejects or stalls the latest peace proposal. Inventories continue drawing at record pace. Brent tests 120 to 130. The bull case for prices resolving lower. A Hormuz deal gets done in the next 30 to 60 days. UAE begins releasing pent-up supply. Saudi-led OPEC eventually floods the market. Long-term demand faces headwinds from already occurring demand destruction. My base case sits in the middle. Elevated prices through summer 2026. Volatility spiking around every new development in the peace talks. Let me break down how I'm thinking about this from a portfolio standpoint. Near-term winners: U.S. oil majors with UAE operations. ExxonMobil and Occidental Petroleum both have significant ADNOC partnerships. Watch Exxon and OXY. Energy ETFs with heavy crude exposure benefit from the current price spike. XLE and USO are your liquid proxies. Physical gold continues to benefit from macro uncertainty. War premium, dollar instability from energy inflation, and supply shock fears are all gold positive. Near-term losers. Airlines and transportation. Jet fuel costs are crushing margins. Energy-intensive manufacturers face input cost pressure. Emerging market economies with no domestic oil production are getting squeezed hard. The longer-term structural shift. Once Hormuz reopens and UAE output can actually reach market, you could see meaningful downward pressure on Brent, particularly if other OPEC members follow the UAE out the door and production discipline collapses entirely. This is a bifurcated thesis. Short-term bullish oil on supply shock. Long-term bearish on OPEC pricing power as the cartel fragments. Let me close with the macro frame, because I think this is the most underreported angle. OPEC has been losing relevance for years. The US shale revolution permanently broke OPEC's ability to set a price floor. OPEC responded by expanding to OPEC Plus and pulling Russia in. But that structure was always fragile. Russia and Saudi Arabia nearly went to war in the oil markets in 2020. The alliance held barely. Now the Iran war has done what no market force could. It created a physical and political rupture inside the cartel. Iran, an OPEC founding member, attacked fellow OPEC members' infrastructure and shipping. The UAE got hit with Iranian missiles and drones. Its oil exports were strangled by a fellow cartel member's military actions. At that point, what exactly does OPEC membership offer the UAE? Quotas that cost them billions. No security protection, no solidarity. An Iran that sat at the same table while launching attacks. The answer is nothing. And the UAE made the only rational choice. OPEC isn't dead yet, but it has never been weaker, and the world may be watching its slow motion unraveling in real time. Thank you for watching. If you want to stay ahead of the macro energy picture, subscribe and hit the bell. I'll be covering every major development as this story evolves. Drop your questions in the comments. I read everything. I'll see you in the next one.